Okay, right. Yeah. So Agile, we will call them in a two short different meanings like incremental and iterative approach. Incremental in the sense for each sprint, you will be increasing the total software or working software you will be producing to the client. And iterative is nothing but in a sprint, the end product will not be finalized every time. Okay. There will be change request for them, or sometimes there may be major bugs in it. So what you do for that means you will create another bug or change request or user story for that change request from the stakeholder. Based on the priority, you will add it to the upcoming sprints. So that is an iterative approach. So in short, Agile can consider as an incremental and iterative approach. Okay. So in Agile, we have few uh, models or framework called Scrum, XP, Kanban. Okay. So we have these frameworks. Okay. So out of them, the most commonly used one, most commonly used framework will be our Scrum. And coming to XP, it is nothing but extreme programming, extreme programming, because which means the entire model or framework will be based on developer side, only the programming part. And Kanban is nothing but visual board. Okay, you can call it as a visual board. Like instead of in a single sprint, like if we have a fixed timing, after that fixed timing, we will go for new set of requirements, right, in Scrum. But in Kanban, it won't be like that. You will have all the requirements aside, and you will just go with flow. Like if you completed few requirements, and you will start picking new ones. Okay, there is no fixed time limit there. Okay, so that will be your Kanban. So you will have all the requirements in a single visual board. You will just move them across the phases once it start completed. Okay, there won't be any time period to fix that within this 2 weeks we need to do this much of work and all. Okay, so most commonly used and most popular one, Scrum. Why this has been very commonly used thing? Because Scrum has a structured time event box structure, structure and time event management of user stories. Okay, so the meaning for it is that Scrum, you will be having your entire timeline will be splitted into sprints. Okay, sprints. So this sprints is nothing but fixed time period. So why I'm not saying 2 weeks? Because 2 weeks is not fixed for sprint. Most of the people will think like sprint means 2 weeks, right? No, sprint will be anywhere around 0 to 4 weeks. Okay, why we are using 2 weeks as a major thing? Because most of the companies will go for 2 weeks, which is a medium or medium one, where we can focus on the few part at a time. Okay, so based on the project timeline and project complexity, the sprint value will be changing. Okay, so how this Agile works? Okay, how this Agile works? Let me verify your doubt. Right, how this Agile works? So I hope everyone know about waterfall, right? How that requirement gathering and everything will happen. But in Agile, in Scrum, what happens is that you will have a user or client. Okay, he will be having some idea in his mind about a project. Okay, so now he will be approaching our company. Let's say he approached COPD itself, approached COPD for a web application. Okay. So now our COPD business analyst don't know about their idea, right? So now what they do that use client will provide a product vision document or BA will assist BA or PO, okay, will assist to create this product vision doc with the client. Okay. So yeah, so how that idea will be transforming to client to our sector, our organization means so they will provide a product vision document. So just like our BRD, which we will get all the details about the project and what we need to do for that project, that thing will be happened in this product vision document. Okay. So in this product vision document, things like why this project started. Okay. What is the need for it? Who are the target audience? Who are the stakeholders? What is ROI? If needed, they can mention. It is an optional thing. Okay. Okay. So these are all the questions that we get answered from this product vision document. So with this product vision document, we will get a basic idea of what they are trying to achieve. Okay. So now let's say we had a meeting with the client and we come up with this product vision document. Now we are okay to develop, right? So a project will be very huge to complete or to develop from the scratch, right? So in the waterfall project, you will be having requirements, which they called as needs, right? Needs of a client and all, right? So in the waterfall, how they have these requirements in the FRS functional requirement, in Scrum, those requirements will be marked as user stories. Okay. So user stories is nothing but a piece of functionality or need that user wanted. Okay. So that is nothing but a user story. So we will have a user story workshop, and we will start coming up with user stories to create user stories. Okay. So the format of user story, the format of user story. So there are a number of formats, but most preferred one is as a role. I want to need so that benefit. Sorry, benefit. Okay. So this is the formula or the three-line structure of user story we will use because it will state exactly who, from whose perspective the user story is been creating, what they actually needed, and once that need has been fulfilled, what they get in return. Okay. So if I give an example for this format, let's say, let's go with our e-commerce itself. Okay. Let's say as a user, I want to log in so that I can edit my profile. Okay. So if you look this carefully, this user story has been created from user's perspective. Sorry, user's perspective, right? So what his need is to have a login functionality. So once that login functionality is done, what he will be getting, his profile will be created and he can start editing that profile. Okay, so that is an example. And not always user story will start with user. Sometimes you can call it as a admin. I want to have a dashboard so that I can see the total sales of Telangana region. Okay, so this is also a user story that has been created from the admin side. Okay, and what he wants is a dashboard that helps him to understand what are the total sales of this region, Telangana region. Okay, so by based on the user stories, we can cut down the requirements into small manageable pieces, and developers can start developing these features. Okay, and now, so does it okay to have just this user stories? Can we start this developing means? No, because even though you have the user story, let me copy this thing and this one. Okay, so let's say think yourself as a developer. Okay, so I think most of you who attended this session are kind of developers, right? So most of you are developers, and your manager or team lead came and said that we have these user stories to create, and he just given you these lines and multiple of these lines on the entire page. Okay, let's say 10 user stories he created, like he given just like this, and he just said, okay, start working. Can you manage like what we need to do at first, or what we need to start at this initial state? What are the most important user stories out of all? We don't know, because he just gave you this just a user story picture. Okay, so for that not to happen an issue in the real time, we have two things which decides the priority and complexity of a user story. Okay, so for a user story, you will be having a business value. Okay, for CP, CP is nothing but also a SP. Okay, story points or complexity points. Story points will be using in the real time, like in JIRA. Mostly you will be looking at story points instead of complexity points. But in theoretical, we call it as a complexity points. Okay, so story points, right? Let me make it as this. Yeah. So business value will tell us how important this user story or requirement for the business in terms of financial and economical. Okay. So that is why what your business value will give to your user story. And CP or SP will tell us how much efforts required to complete this user story by devs. Okay, please mind these spelling mistakes. Okay, financial and economical. Okay, so with this BV and CP, now you get an somewhat idea, like out of these 10 or hundreds of user stories, which are very important, that we need to fulfill on a priority based. Okay, so how these BV values will look like. Okay, so we have techniques called $100 technique, $100 technique, where we use uh, what we can say customized currency notes that are available at that moment. Okay, So what I mean available at that moment, right now we don't have any these 1,000 nodes and all, right? So our $100 techniques will also follow same nodes that are available in the real time, real world scenario. So we have 10, 20s, 50s, hundreds, 200s, and 500s as the max. Okay. So your BV will be any of these things, and based on the higher value, that importance will be higher to that user story. Okay. And coming to complexity points or story points. So story points or complexity points, we will have different techniques like uh, Fibonacci series, which means 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. And we have t-shirt size, uh, S, M, L, okay, XL, double XL, and triple XL, okay. Fibonacci series and t-shirt size, and you have a lot more, okay. So this Fibonacci series will tell us how complex is a user story for a developers to implement in a coding part or in a development stage, okay. Got it? Yeah. And who will be deciding these values? Like BV values will be decided by business owners with collaboration of people. Okay. And complexity points or story points by dev team with BA. You can say a Scrum team. Okay. Scrum team is better. So ultimately, who has the say? Dev team has the ultimate decision here. And here, business owner will have ultimate decision. Okay. Right. So yeah, most of you got the doubt, right? If Fibonacci series numbers are just numbers, why can't we use natural, okay, or whole or relational? We have all these kinds of numbers in mathematics, right? So why only choosing Fibonacci series? Why not these numbers? So we just have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and all, right? So why not? Because see, if you observe carefully to the Fibonacci series, the gap between two adjacent numbers are higher. Like if you check 5 and 8, you have a gap of 3. And if you look for 8 and 3, you have almost like 10, 11, 12, and all, right. So the reason why we are choosing Fibonacci series that even though you given adjacent numbers, we can identify the gap of complexity between two user stories. Okay, so let's say me and Saurabh has given two user stories 5 and 8. Okay, in the table, if you see 5 and 8 are adjacent, but by numbers you can see Saurabh user story is much more complex than mine, right? So we can easily differentiate the complexity if we use this Fibonacci series. But if you use the same user, these numbers, okay, let's say Angita has given number 6 and I have given number 5. Okay, by looks of it, it seems there is only one difference between our two user stories, and it's not that easy to differentiate like the complexity between these user stories, right? So the major threat to use these normal numbers is that we can't exactly identify the complexity between two user stories. Okay, and next thing is that the gaps. Okay, let's say you want to give a user story 3 and someone feels that no, 3 is very low, it's better to be some much higher. He can choose 5 or 8. Okay, but if we do same thing with this 3, Okay, this natural number is 3. If you want to look for the eighth number, you have to skip all these 3 numbers or 4 numbers from the row. Okay, and now if you people start picking these numbers, there is no fixed like a differentiation between how complex that user story, uh, 3, 5 or 8. Okay, I hope you are getting my point. The main reason for Fibonacci series, with the small numbers, like with a small series of numbers, you can get higher value. If you look carefully by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Fifth position we got our number 5, and sixth position we got our number 8. If you look the sixth position, we still got number 6. Okay, if you want to go for higher values, you need to skip all these remaining values, which seems not like fall well when you calculating the complexity. Okay, and another thing is that the differentiation between two adjacent numbers. Okay, so these are the two major things, the reason we are going with Fibonacci series. And we have t-shirt size scale, uh, yes, ML and Excel kind of thing. So this is also a modern way to identify the complexity of a user stories. Okay, you can use them. S being very easy, and small being medium and all. Large means somewhat a better kind of complex and all. Okay, and remember one thing. After 13, if your user story got more than, if a user story got more than 13 story points, it will consider as a epic. Okay, epic is nothing but a large body of work that cannot be completed within a single sprint. Okay, so epic is also a kind of functionality itself, but the complexity of that functionality is much higher that we cannot complete within a single sprint. Okay, so then what we do, then we break down the epic into user stories. Okay, small chunks of user stories. So one of the example for that, you can say um, user management is an epic. Okay, it is a vague word. We don't know how many time complexity we, and how much time required for this functionality. But if you divide them accordingly, you will get user profile. Okay, user profile is a small functionality. Under user management, what else you can get? You can get um, rewards, like coupons for daily login customers. Okay, so these are all the chunks of user stories we can come break down from this user management based on that specific uh, domain or specification. Okay, right. So in this way, you can break down the epic. And then we have once, yes, development team has confirmed these user stories by giving these story points and all. So how this happens, like in real time, how they will be giving these values and all, right? Yes, Aishwarya, you can get this recording in the YouTube. Okay, right. And yeah, so how this real time will be going to happen? Okay, Gayatri, yeah, Epic will be splitted into futures and then futures to user stories. But in real time, futures will not be that much uh, use of it. So we can directly break down Epic to user stories. Okay, so just remember Epic, user stories, and then tasks. Okay, if you user stories, let me write it over here. Epic, user stories, and task. Task is nothing but a single unit of body of work that can be done in a single day. Okay. So when you break down the user stories to a multiple team members, that will consider as a uh, what we saw task. Okay. There is no full form of epic. Okay. It's just a huge body. That's all. Okay. Right. So now how it happens means in real time, just remember this. What happens is that uh, all the business owners will come together with PO and BA, and they will start discussing uh, all the user stories, all the futures, which will be more impact on the business. Okay, and they will be giving these dummy notes, fake currency notes with these numbers printed on them. Okay, and they will start assigning these currency nodes to that user story. If they feel this login functionality has 20 worth of business value, then they will put 20 story points to that business value. Okay, sorry, 20 is currency note to that business value, to that user story. Okay, so in the same way, everything will be done by all the stakeholders. In between, as a PO and a BA, we can guide them if they are overestimating the functionality. Like let's say they are thinking login is very low importance, so they just given it 10. But in real time, if login being any harder, people won't even look into your insights of application, right? So as a BA, you just need to give that insights and better to come up with the 20 or 50 BV for login and entire login future. Okay. So when I say login means username, password, email, only these things are not. Okay. Inside login, you have verifications and these Google automatic logins and OTPs, email verifications, everything will be considered. Okay. So yes. So in that way, they will give these BV values. And coming to uh, story points will be given by the developers because they have the domain knowledge of technicality. And once they look at the user stories, and if they feel this complexity is higher, it's have some higher complexity, they can pick these Fibonacci numbers, and these numbers are printed behind the poker cards. Okay, they have this customized poker cards, and they will assign these poker cards to a user story. Okay, and apart from this BV and CP for a user story, you will be having another thing called AC, which is acceptance criteria. Okay, acceptance criteria. So what is this acceptance criteria for a user story? So imagine you are a BA and you said user should log in using email and password. Okay, and you have created that user story and you have given it to a developer, and he developed that thing. And you, if you look at to that functionality, even if you entered a password, all the zeros, it's still logging as you have given in the user story. Okay, at that time, the developers will say, as you asked, we have created login feature which will work just by giving email and password. Okay, so that is not a truly completed user story, because if you want to say user story is completed, you need some verification or some criteria that this user story will match. Okay, so that criteria is nothing but acceptance criteria, which in the name itself it suggests that user story should fulfill all these criteria to get acceptance. Okay, so let's say for the same login feature, the acceptance criteria will be uh, only Gmail @Gmail pass email should be allowed. Password should have alphanumeric with 6 to 8 digits, and numbers should be start from 0 to 9. All the special characters will not be allowed. So these are all the checklist to that make sure that the user story passed down. So once this all these checklists are completed successfully, then we can say that user story is perfectly done. Okay, so acceptance criteria is nothing but it is a checklist of conditions that user story should follow, so that we can say that user story is completed successfully. Okay. So as of now, we came from start of the project, like how the project is started, how we will get that information from the client to our organization to start, and how the requirements will be transformed from the product vision document to the user stories, how these user stories will be created, who will be creating, and what values or components that user story will have, and by how we need to provide those components. Okay, we understood all these things as of now. And yeah, one small thing is that who will be creating these user stories, right? Mostly product owner will be creating these user stories with the help of team members. Okay, so because user story should be structured one and easy to identify without any ambiguity, right? So we can't allow like non-technical stakeholders to write down the user stories, because it will become some vague without uncertainties and all, right? So product owner will be always behind us. He will make sure that we follow exact format without any issues in the later stages. Okay, so as of now, we completed how to create user stories and all. If you have any doubts up until now, please text me in the chat box. If not, we can start with the remaining process, and that once that process is completed, we can work with Jira. Okay, please post your doubts. Okay, say let's say we got 100 user stories. Okay, we got 100 user stories, and all of them are equipped with the BV, CP, and AC. Okay, so now we need to define sprint. We need to define sprint. Okay, so sprint means, as we discussed, a time box, right? So whether it is 2 weeks or 4 weeks, we need to define that sprint. Once that is done, what we will do means we push all the user stories into product backlog. Okay, remember this name, product backlog. Okay, you will be pushing all the user stories uh, into the product backlog. Okay, so now we will be doing sorting and prioritizing of user stories using some prioritizing techniques. Okay, you'll be using for some prioritization techniques. So most people will confuse about sorting and prioritizing. Okay, sorting is nothing but classification or grouping the user stories. Okay, it can be grouped by users. Okay, different types of users. It can be grouped by functionalities. It can be grouped by epic. Okay, so it can be whatever you think, whatever needed at that time, you can sort it. Okay, coming to prioritization, prioritization is nothing but we will try to keep high priority user stories on top, which will be ready for the upcoming sprint to work with. Okay, so we have few techniques called Moscow, MVP, high BV, and low CP. Okay, so first we will decide about Moscow. So most of us knows, right? Moscow full form: must, should, could, and would. Okay. So must are nothing but user stories that are definitely need to be performed at the moment, and should are they are we need to work with that, we need to develop these user stories, but as of now not uh, like at the moment. Could are these user stories are okay, like these functionalities are okay to have but not mandatory, and would are like we can think about them later. Okay, so let me write it down clearly. Let me. Okay, must are user stories that need must to be developed at the moment. Okay, should or need to develop, not at the moment. Cool to have these futures, not needed as of now. Okay, so that will be your prioritization technique. So based on this must, should, could, would, you will start ranking your user stories, and which comes under must will be on the top, followed by should, could, and would, and then we can do the next thing. Okay, we will come to that next thing once we did all these prioritizations. Okay, and MVP is nothing but minimum viable product. Okay, so minimum viable product MVP is nothing but building a core uh, functionalities of a system, building a core functionalities of a system, MVP, minimum viable product. So let me give an example for MVP. Okay, so let's say our Zomato app itself. Okay, so it is a food delivery app, right? So the core functionality of a food delivery app is to make sure get user login, make sure register restaurants can register themselves to provide all the products and all, and drivers or these riders need to be have that their own login. They should able to find the address of both restaurants and the users, and users should have this checkout process and all. Okay, so all these five functionalities are major and core functionalities of Zomato so that it can start working with the people. Okay, remaining all things like uh, ratings, feedbacks, help mechanism, and profile changing, coupons. All these things are extra things. We can have them, but the main five core functionalities will is okay to just start working with the function app or application. Okay, so MVP is also same. You will start building the minimum core functionalities of a system, and you will give it to a stakeholder, and once he approved, okay, this is what we are looking, this is the main functionality that system need to provide, and once that is done, okay, and then you start adding all the beautifications and everything. Okay, that will be your MVP. And coming to low high BV and low CP, this is the straightforward thing. uh, Higher BV values, BV values, and lower CP values. Based on that, you will rank your user stories. Okay, and which is higher means obviously it will be high impact on the business, and you will start working on them. Okay, so now how we will decide out of them who will be deciding which to work with, and who will be taking these user stories to start with. Okay, so let me come up with the diagram so it will be easy for you and me. So this will be your product backlog. Okay. This will be your sprint backlog. Let's see, can I write? Yes. Product backlog. Let's say we are going with Moscow. Okay. You have 100 user stories here. Okay. So what happens is that in this part, okay, let me, okay, product owner will collaborate with the business owners and decide which user stories or needs are important and for that sprint. Okay, for that sprint. And now product owner will after get deciding like after having this initiated with the business owner, he will come up with some idea, right? So now product owner will decide, okay, now for this sprint, let's have user story number 157689 and so on for sprint one. Okay, so now our developers will pick these user stories into this sprint backlog. Okay, so you will have these user stories into this sprint backlog. Okay, so before you move them to this sprint backlog, you will have something called you will have something called team. Is my screen not visible? Please confirm me. Visible, right? Okay, Aishwarya, please check your internet connection. Right. Okay, you will have something called DOR. Okay, let me show you. Okay, we will have something called DOR, which means definition of ready. Okay, so all the user stories that are pulling from product backlog to sprint backlog should pass this DOR checklist. Okay, so what is this DOR checklist? This DOR checklist is nothing but uh, this is a checklist which makes sure that all the user stories are okay, that we can start working with them, so that people, developers will start working with it. Okay, so checklist like maybe, okay, have this user story has acceptance criteria, had this user story has CP value, has this user story has user story without any ambiguity. So you will have all these checklists. You just need to tick them all, and once that user stories are okay and all of them are passed this DOR checklist, and then you will move them to the sprint backlog, and you will start working with this user stories in a sprint. Okay, and let's have sprint ceremonies, and then we can complete this theory part and we can start with the tool. Okay, we have sprint planning, scrum meeting, sprint review, sprint retrospective, backlog refinement. Okay, so sprint planning is nothing but this scenario only. Like sprint planning is nothing but they will decide the sprint. I mean they will make sure all the user stories are ready to move from sprint backlog, product backlog to sprint backlog. Okay. And scrum meeting or daily startup meeting, the same thing. So it is nothing but every day you will answer three questions. What did you do yesterday? What are you doing today? And have you faced any difficulties from the yesterday work? Okay. And sprint review. Sprint review is nothing but the name suggests itself. After sprint is completed, you will be having a shippable product, right? So you will take that working software to a stakeholder and he will start reviewing that and he will be giving some feedbacks to that product. Okay. And with that feedback, if it is a bugs or change request or anything, you will again assign BVCP and acceptance criteria to it. And based on that urgency, you will make sure whether to move it to the next upcoming sprint or we can wait it for further more sprints. Okay, so that will happen there. Sprint retrospective is nothing but just our more understanding how we performed last sprint. Okay, any change, any problems or any blockages have we faced in the last sprint? If so, what are they? We will identify all those things in the sprint or retrospective. It is just like a kind of reflection and make sure that these blockages will not be repeating in the next sprint. Okay. And then backlog refinement. So backlog refinement is nothing but again prioritization of product backlog. Okay, it's not like uh, product backlog will be prioritized only once. Okay, you will be prioritizing them multiple of times throughout the entire the project because with upcoming futures and upcoming user stories and upcoming change request, the priority will be changed. Okay, so based on that, you need to again prioritize the product backlog uh, before this sprint planning meeting. Okay, at this sprint planning meeting, only thing is to pull product user stories from product backlog to sprint backlog. There won't be any prioritizing of requirements in the sprint planning meeting. Okay, right. And yeah, all these meetings will be overseen by the Scrum Master. Okay, the name Scrum Master. Let me, yeah. So all these things will be overseen or facilitated by Scrum Master. Okay, he's a kind of agile coach for the team. He will make sure that all the team members are following all agile principles and main values. Okay, and any challenges are faced by the team members will be solved by the Scrum Master itself. Okay, right. Okay, let me check. We have few messages. Okay, right. Okay, right. And yeah, after your sprint is completed, you will be having a sprint review meeting, right? Which means a completed small piece of working software will be delivered to a uh, stakeholder, right? So before that happens, you have another checklist called, okay, let me copy this. Let me write it down here itself. So we have another checklist called DOD. Okay. Definition done. Okay, so this is also a checklist that we will focus on before we present our working software to a stakeholder. To a stakeholder in sprint review meeting. Okay. So DOD again a checklist. This checklist is make sure that all things are well done or like everything is done. So there is no issue so that we can start presenting it to the stakeholder. Okay. So again, it is a conditions of checklist like have QA team gone through this user story? Has all the basic testing has been done like unit and regression and whatever things they have been for that organization. So this makes sure that it is well ready and well prepared to present to a stakeholder. Okay, so that is a DOD checklist again. Right. So what we said here, like all this product backlog, creation of user stories in the backlog, moving of user stories from product backlog to sprint backlog, and after the sprint is completed, you will start presenting that working software to sprint review, sprint retrospective, and refinement. This moving part can be seen in the JIRA. Okay, you can make that in the JIRA. And once you do that, JIRA will automatically create few charts called sprint burndown and burn up and velocity. Okay. So these charts will be created by the Jira tool itself. Okay, what is this sprint burndown? So sprint burndown is nothing but it will show us remaining work for that entire sprint. Okay, so whatever user stories you make them as a completed, the sprint burndown will mark it down and show the remaining work. Burn up will shows the completed work, and velocity will show the efficiency of the team members or the completed points, story points of a user story. Okay. And once we see it in the Jira tool, you will understand how this works. Okay. Right. Right. Okay, team. Any doubts on the theory session? If not, we can start working with the Jira tool itself. Please mention any doubts regarding this theory part. Okay. So once you open your Jira tool, okay, so this will be your interface. You'll be having backlog, board, calendar, timeline, pages, format. And if you click on plus, you have all these things. Here, the important thing is reports. Select reports, add to navigation. Okay, in this reports, you can see all the details like burn up, burn down, velocity, and everything. Okay, so all these charts will be created only after a sprint is starting. Okay, burn up and burn down will be produced while the sprint is ongoing. Velocity will be only produced after sprint is completed. Okay, so come to backlog. So this backlog will be considered our product backlog, and this backlog will be considered as our sprint backlog. Okay, so let me delete this thing. We'll start working newly. Let me delete this one also. Okay, right. Okay, so now we need to create a user story or epic or whatever we want. So to create those things, you can press C, or else you can click on this create option. Okay, and let me make it bigger one. Okay, so you can see space. Space is nothing but the project. So e-commerce version 1 I have selected, and work type. So right now we need to create user stories, right? Select user stories and then summary. So summary is nothing but your user story. Whatever you write under summary, will be visible to a developers while they are looking into user story. Okay, so here let's take an example. As a user, I want to log in so that I can add products to my cart. Okay, so that is my user story, and here you can write your acceptance criteria. Okay, so things like um, okay, after successful login, user should get a pop-up of welcome message, and login will be done only with the verified username and password, and um, to check out, um, cart should at least have one item. Okay, so this is all the acceptance criteria. So to make sure this user story is completed successfully, we need to measure whether it follows all these conditions or not. Okay, so you can assign the priority. So is it high, highest, high, low, medium? So let me give high, and come down. You can check story point estimation. So let's say I have given 5 for this, and reporter. So right now I am the one who created this thing, right? So it will be taking my name exactly, and whatever wireframes or prototypes you have been designing, you can attach them to this browse. Okay, and then click on create. So once you create that, you can see that a user story has been created. And if you want to edit that, you just click on that user story. You will get a subpart here, and then you can start editing this user story here itself. Okay, here itself you can edit it. And right now let's create an epic this time. Okay, so change work type to epic. So here let's say our epic will be as a user, I want referral program, so I won't get bored of this application. Okay, so here it is a vague thing, like it is not a certainty. Like what do you mean by referral program, or what are the things? So this will be our epic, because referral program will have things like sharing of sending referral links, or having referral bonuses, or having uh, coins kind of thing when you purchase a lot amount of things. So basically the program is to make sure that user uh, will be retained in that application without choosing another one. Okay, so that is a kind of benefits program. So we make sure that our customers won't leave our application. Okay, so let me have this as an blue. So you can change issue color based on the colors you want. So let me select this one, and let me select this create another part, and then create. Okay, so now a epic has been created. For that epic, let me create a user story. Okay, so let's say as a user, I want to achieve super coins for a successful checkout. Okay, successful checkout. So our acceptance criteria might be like, just a minute. Our acceptance criteria might be like, uh, checkout should be like checkout price should be greater than 1,999. Okay. And super coins will be assigned to electronics category products only. So like that, you can create your acceptance criteria. So now you can see a parent column, right? If you check this parent column, whatever epics you have created, you can select that epic and then give some story points to here, maybe some 8, and then click on create. Okay. So now if you see, a story, user story has been created and that user story has been attached to a epic. Okay. If you want to look for epic, press press button E or keyword E. Okay. So let me, okay. So this will be your epic. And if you drop down it, you can see start date, due date, and all the details of that epic on the right side. Okay, so this will be your epic. And if you want to assign an epic to already created user story, you can just click on this epic button and you can select it. Okay. Okay, you don't have to create from here itself. You can directly create the user story here itself. Can change the factors from story, bugs, and everything. So let me create bug this time. This time, let's say, mm, as a user, getting null pointer issue at checkout. Okay. So for that, let me enter and assign story points here itself. Let's say this is a high priority and let me give 8 and let me select few user store. Let me write user stories few story or not story here. Okay. This time as an admin, I want to log in so that I can view total orders. Okay. So to make it simple, I'm just creating here itself. Okay. As a admin, trying to have a dashboard so that I can view my sales KPI. As a rider, I log in so that I can view customer address. Okay. So let me give this story points, maybe 3, 5, 3. Okay. So you can assign these story points to someone. Like if you select this one and then click on it, you can select the names of the your team invites and you can select that person and that user story will be assigned to that specific person. Okay. And yeah, so now we have created backlog of some user stories, right? So in real time, you'll be having multiples of user stories, not these single or 3 to 4. You will have a structured one. Okay, and sometimes you won't be able to see the story points or this to-do list at all. So At that time, just refresh the page 2 to 3 times. You will get the changes. Okay, because Jira is an online tool, right? So some lag will be happen. Okay, so now we have created user stories and we are sure that these are okay to implement. Then you have to create a sprint or start a sprint. So to do that, you can see an option called create sprint. Click on create sprint. Sprint has been created. And now I want to move these user stories to that sprint. So you can just simply drag and drop to the sprint. Okay, you can see sprint one, user story has been dropped. And let me select all these print items, also all these user stories items. And let me move them towards the sprint. Okay. So now if you see clearly, uh, 32 story points are to do, still need to be done. And in progress, there are 0 and done are 0 because we didn't even start this sprint, right? So now let's start this sprint. Click on start sprint. You can see duration automatically set it to 2 weeks. Change that to custom and change the time to lowest possible. Okay. So it is 11/1/12/50 means let me make it 13. Okay. Okay. So the reason why I'm changing custom and putting as low as possible for the start and end date because in this sprint burn up or burn down chart, usually it will be 2 weeks of time period and easy to identify the graph. But right now in the example part, we will just move these user stories to done stage very quickly, right? So the graph may not be that easy to find out. Okay, so that's the reason the x-axis reduce it to small, then we can identify the graph clearly. So the sprint goal is to make sure referral program completion maybe. Okay, click on start. Now sprint has been started. So it means developers has taken the user stories and that user stories can seen in this board. Okay, right? To do in progress done. So all the 6 user stories has been moved to the to do state. Okay. So before we move them to this progress, let's go to reports and burn up report. Let's see. Okay. So right now, these committed work or the completed works are 0 because we didn't complete anything, right? But you can see that the to-do work is 32. So what happens is that when you move a user story worth of story points, this green graph will move towards the upwards. Okay, will move towards the upwards. Okay, let me annotate it. So let me. Okay, so let's say I have completed a user story of 5 story points. Then what happens is that this green line will move story points 5 upwards. Okay, and if within 1 or 2 hours I haven't completed anything, then the graph will be straight. Okay, till 4 o'clock I haven't done anything. Then I have completed story point worth of 5. Then my graph will move to 10 because previous 5 and now 5 10, right? And then I have completed worth of 10 story points. Then move to 20. In this way, my graph will move until it reaches this line, this committed line. Okay. If it is reaches this committed line, that means the work has been completed successfully. All the user stories has been moved to done stage. Okay. And let me erase this thing. And the reason why they have given you this straight bar. Okay, why have they given you this bar? Because see, if this green line is always below this imaginary line, and somewhere air around they have meted here, it means the developers has been like overestimated themselves and picked user stories that are more complexity to do in a single sprint. Okay, so this is an imaginary line. If you how much difference you have from this imaginary line to your actual line will show us whether we overcommitted or overestimated or uh, overestimated ourselves or overcommitted to the user stories for a sprint. Okay, so let me show you. So if a group of developers has been overestimated themselves and they picked at least a 50 worth of story points and they find out it is very to complete, then graph will be something like this. Okay, somewhere below the imaginary line. So the gap here tells us they have made a mistake and overestimated themselves and picked the user stories that are very complex, and that means they haven't properly given the story points for a user story. Okay, so this is one type, and sometimes your graph will be more above this imaginary line. Okay, so that means you have underestimated this sorry, yeah, underestimated yourself. That means whatever user stories you think very hard are very easy actually when the implementation started. So you have done excellently for that sprint. Okay, so some of you might think that this graph is better than this graph. Okay, actually in the real-time scenario, both graphs are not good because even though it is well above this imaginary line, still if these user stories are very easy to work with, they can have at 5 more or 10 more user stories for that sprint, which can reduce the burden in the next upcoming sprint. Okay, so having lower estimation is an issue, and if you come to this, having higher estimations also is an issue because at the end you started to connect with this your goal. That means you have hurried and rushed towards the goal. Okay, so at the review part you might get lots of errors if you always underperformed and you meet the quota at the end of the sprint. Okay, so that's how you read your sprint burn up or burn down. Okay, team, any doubts on how to read these charts? Team, please confirm me so that we can work with burn up, burn downs. Okay, thank you. Okay, so just in case, let me put it in a brief way. Okay, see, let's say use developers has been picked 20 user stories. Okay, and they thought these 20 user stories are very hard based on the story points. Okay, and once they started working with them, they feel like they are very easy to done. So then their completion progress will be well above the standard imaginary line. Okay, so that means they have overestimated the complexity of a user story. Okay, so this is an issue uh, because of overestimation only they said 20 will be more than enough. But while implementation, they feel 20 is very easy. So which means they can have at least 10 more for that sprint. Okay, so this makes less burden for the upcoming sprints. Okay, so this overestimation is a problem for us, And let's say same scenario, they thought these same 20 user stories are very easy to complete. Okay, they have underestimated the story points and they thought they are very easy to complete. Okay, but at the implementation part they thought while implementing they feel they're very hard to implement. Okay, then they will be very low behind the imaginary line. So that means uh, they haven't like selected exact complexity of a story user stories, and now they are facing the issue. So even though they achieved the target at the last moment, there might be lots of issues in between, so that they rushed it so that they can actually uh, completed that sprint. Okay, so both overestimation and underestimation is the issue. So in real time, there won't be any ideal chart. You'll be seeing lots of bumps and heights. So let me show you how it will look like. Let me clear all these things. So we have this theoretical knowledge, right? In if a sprint is ongoing, you shouldn't include new stories to this sprint, right? But in real time, it will hardly practice it. Okay. So what happens is that, let's say I have started this, I'm going like this, and suddenly they have included a story points worth of 5. So then the bump will go down here, and then they will move to here, and something like this. And suddenly they included again 10 story points worth of user story. So in this way, the things will be happening. Okay. So in real time, based on the urgency, few user stories will be introduced in the middle of the sprint. Still, we need to make sure we complete this sprint. Okay. And at most, not mostly, but sometimes the sprint will be stopped in between. Okay. So how that look like means something like this. Okay. Something like this. So there is no progress throughout the sprint, and they have missed almost uh, 10 story points worth of work. Okay, so by looking into sprint burn up and burn down, you can actually estimate all these things, whether our developers are actually giving story points correctly or not. If not, you can actually see that difference between the imaginary line. By that, you can confirm whether it is actually done or not. And you can see whether they are taking seriously to complete story points or they're just doing nothing and the graph is showing flat or not. Okay, so all these things will be carried out or seen by this story these charts. So charts are very important in this report, this scrum. Okay, so let me clear out this. Okay, so this is your sprint burn down, sorry, burn up. Let me show you sprint burn down also. Okay, reports, burn up. So this will be your burn up. You have same imaginary. Sorry. We already done this, right? Burn down. Let's go with burn down. Okay, you will have same imaginary, but instead of going to upwards, the graph will move down towards the zero x-axis. Okay, so how many story points you will be completing, that much depth, this red graph will be fall down, and until it moves to zero x-axis, the work is not being completed. Okay, and yeah, so let me push few user stories into in progress. Okay, and let's see the reports. Right, you can see that graph has been moved somewhat because the progress is been happening, still it is not completed or not added, they're just moving towards the straight line. This time let me complete a story point. Let's say the story point is 5, right? Let me complete this as a done. And let me move to this bundle. Okay, let me refresh this. Okay, and now you can see the graph is reduced from 32 and you can see -5. So like we have reduced it, right? So 5 story points worth has been completed down. Okay, and if you see this straight line, it is done because we started this sprint, but we haven't done anything in this few minutes of time, right? So that's why this lag is happened. If you see x-axis, the x-axis is only happening by hours. So if you do any lags in the minutes also, that will be notified in this chart. Okay. So if it is done by days, then you don't get these kind of irregularities. Okay. So let me move to the charts and let me complete few user stories. Okay. Let me move them here and here. Let's go with the burn up. And you can see burn up has been moved up. Okay. So let me complete all these user stories once again. I'm just dragging and dropping towards the done stage. Okay. So now all 6 has been done. And let me check the reports. Let me refresh the page once again. So let's go with burn down. So now you can see, right, all things has been come down and they have reached the 0th line. So you can see why this is a straight line, not it is moved across all these things as you shown me, because within matter of minutes or seconds, we moved all these user stories to the done, right? So that's why you don't have any time to register that lag. So that's why this is a straight line. And if you look for burn down also, sorry, burn up also, you will be seeing same format. Let me check. Right? You can see same format that it reached the top line. Now, if you look for velocity, okay, you can see velocity is waiting for completed sprint. So we need to complete this sprint. So now we have completed all these things, right? Click on complete sprint, click on complete. Okay, so let's go to reports, velocity report, and you can see Scrum for this sprint one, commitment are 32 story points and completed are 32 story points. That means by looking it, we can estimate our team efficiency, whether they overestimated themselves or underestimated themselves. So right now you can see like for this sprint one, as a Scrum Master or PO, we can say, okay, they achieved their commitment. So we can add a few user stories to the upcoming sprint. So next sprint, it can be 40 commitments. Okay. So based on that, you can manage the story points, right? Okay. So yeah, any doubts on the Jira tool team? And yeah, one more thing I forgot to mention, someone has this doubt. So what exactly business analyst responsibility in Agile? Because product owner is the one who interact with the stakeholders and gathering requirements and all, right? So why this BA and what he will be doing? So in real time, few of the organizations will have two different roles like product owner and business analyst, and a few companies will have both them merged together. So if you have different roles, then your work will be clarifying user stories to the developers. Product owner work is to get the requirement from the stakeholders. Okay, that's all. He will interact with the stakeholders. He will get the requirements. As a BA, you will start defining these requirements to the developers in an understandable way. And whatever developers are developing, you need to make sure keep an eye on them whether they're developing aligning with the business process or not. Okay, so that is done by the business analyst. Product owner will not come a day every day to look at the uh, process by the what is the progress of the developers and whether it is aligning with business values or not. Okay, as a BA, it is your duty to do that. Okay, so any doubts on this session, team? If not, you can leave the session.